the whole system. But of course, the ideologist theorizes the whole system as an evil system, so that there's a value, a set of values built into the whole thing right at the start.
Well, now, would we reach in the Academy a collision point between the ideologist and the nihilist? It seems to me that the doctrine of academic freedom sometimes seems to be telling you that nothing is knowable. You get the relativism of people like John Dewey, Oliver Wendell Holmes, and they are really saying all ideas must start even in the race, because it is presumptuous for any professor to, for instance, say that there is more to be learned from studying the moral intimations of the Declaration of Independence than of the manifesto of Karl Marx. But now the people who object to that are insisting that among the responsibilities of the Academy is to forward a tradition and to secure the patrimony. So
yes, academic freedom certainly doesn't mean that all ideas are equal, because amongst one of the consequences of academic criticism is, of course, the discarding of a lot of ideas as being
yes, but John Stuart Mill said as long as anybody believes that they have not been satisfactorily discarded, then you can't say that they have been discarded, right?
No, and indeed, even if they're wrong, it's worth allowing them to be raised again, because the exercise of arguing against falsity strengthens the truth. John Milton
that's
took
a
the same
discipline.
view. That's a discipline.
That's a discipline, but Mill, as I remember, said you can't consider that a particular proposition has erred if anybody believes it to be true.
Yes, well, this is the skeptical ground of freedom. Oh, now why nihilist? You see, the skeptical ground...
Because in point of fact, nothing can be thought to be untrue, because it's, you can always find somebody who believes anything, can't you?
Oh, indeed. Descartes said that there is no absurdity such that you can't find one philosopher or another who has believed it. No, the real crux of academic freedom is, of course, that it's impossible to discover anybody whom you would want to trust who could declare this theory is true or that theory is unambiguously false. It's a recognition of the fact that, that a modern society consists of large numbers of people with rather different ideas about what's true and what's desirable.
Doesn't it?
Oh no, because you don't make that your criterion of truth. Your criterion of truth is logical, but your criterion of what can be said is that anybody wants to say it.
Well, Holmes would not have agreed with that. I mean, he said the test of truth is its ability to gain the sponsorship of the marketplace.
This is the judge, Oliver Wendell Holmes, is it? Or,
yes.
Yes. I wouldn't take my my doctrines about truth from a judge.
No, I certainly would not. But
they're not great epistemologists.
What I'm saying is that there's a nihilist strain that finds academic freedom a very useful ally, and that what you end up with is nescience. You cannot know anything.
But what you're saying is that academic freedom can be misused for bad purposes, and that's true, but I don't know what can't be misused for bad purposes. Everything can be used for bad purposes. The important thing, I think, is to clarify what academic freedom is and what its value is. Its value is probably, you see, there isn't now much difference between academic freedom and any other kind of freedom. 100 years ago, academic freedom was needed, for example, by lecturers in medical schools talking about the anatomy of sex, because if you said things that professors of medicine said outside a university, that they said inside a university, they'd have been run in for obscenity, so that you needed academic freedom in that way, because social conventions were much stricter. But now I don't know that there's any vast difference, is there, between the freedom of an academic and the freedom of any citizen. They say, and are free to say, exactly what they feel like saying.
Yes, but the point I'm trying to make is that one should object to a celebration of that part of academic freedom that conduces to nescience, even as one should not celebrate the fact that the First Amendment, malgré soi, permits decide, right?
Yes.
But there is a lot of, there is a high reliance on democracy and on academic freedom and other things that we tend to believe in order to push positions which are the opposite of ideology in that they say nothing can be believed. Intellectual anarchy, really, isn't it?
Ideology is quite inclined to take up these positions that nothing very much can be believed. I mean, for certain purposes, ideologies are curiously idealistic in spite of their realistic front. But that's a very complicated point. I would revert simply to saying that academic freedom, like anything else, can be misused, and I don't know how one would construct a foolproof version of academic freedom which would guarantee what's good in it and prevent villains and knaves and fools from misusing it. That's where the problem lies, of course. The further point is that a modern society like our own is a kind of bizarre adventure in which we move from generation to generation, loosening restraints which people in previous generations would have thought absolutely essential to maintaining a society. And at every loosening of restraints, somebody has said, it can't last, we shall fall apart. And so far, to an astonishing extent, and America is, of course, above all the laboratory of this, to an astonishing extent, the country has, you know, the society manages to survive and prosper. Now, we don't know how far this process can go, and I certainly sympathize with people who say perhaps it's gone far enough, and we ought to be very cautious about the restraints that we continue to loosen. But
what comes primarily to mind is what, the idea of authority?
Yes, I think the idea of authority is absolutely essential to sustaining a modern society, because the only alternative is the idea of reason, and that simply introduces zealots and fanatics into the game, whereas the thing about authority is that a person with authority can say, you must do that because I have authority, which is not the same as saying I'm infallible.
So in other words, there need not be any internal assent in doing what the person in charge, whether he's a professor or a lieutenant,
that's exactly the point. Yes, you don't have to have internal assent. Obedience will do.
Well, let's turn to the examiner. Mr. Sobran, as I've said, is a senior editor of National Review and syndicated columnist, a graduate of Eastern Michigan University, who did graduate work there in English. He is columnist carried by Universal Press Syndicate. He's a commentator on CBS's Spectrum. Mr. Sobran.
Mr. Minogue, I enjoyed your book very much and learned a great deal from it. Bill's anecdote of Bernadette Devlin reminded me of another one that illustrates, I think, the interconnectedness of everything under the ideological view. I saw a headline in a radical feminist newspaper a few years ago that said, "Why the Nestle's boycott is a lesbian issue."
You haven't told us why.
I forget, but it was pretty convincing. I understand you to be saying that that ideology is inherently subversive of any real social order. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, we have a case where ideology has come to power. We have a number of cases, but the Soviet Union is the main one, of course. The general presumption is that there's a certain cynicism among Soviet rulers that Mr. Gorbachev didn't get his new job by passing a civil service exam on the labor theory of value. But how totally cynical can they be? In what sense do they believe in their ideology, or is that the wrong category, believe?
That's a very difficult question to answer, and also, of course, a very interesting one. The point that I would want to make on it is that all ideologies, like Marxism, are forms of revolutionary praxis. The genius, Marx, is extremely clear on that. Therefore, their natural habitat is being persecuted and being used by some set of people who want absolute and total power to transform a society completely into something different. Now, they found themselves in the slightly unfortunate position of acquiring power in, of course, many cases in the 20th century from the Soviet Union onwards. And once they've acquired power, the results have, of course, been horrific, because you then begin to see what's involved in trying to create a homogeneous system. It means killing the people who don't fit, and therefore homicide on a colossal scale has normally